Hi, and welcome to Ivy English. I'm Karen.
And I'm Chris Gorski.
Today is April 3rd, and we're on page 12 in your magazines. And today we're going to hear part 1 of an article about a very, very rainy Taiwanese city.
Boy, that describes a lot of places in Taiwan.
I mean, extremely rainy.
Now we're narrowing it down. And we're at the tippy top of Taiwan. So, of course, we're talking about Keelung.
That's right. And you're going to see it written as Keelung because that's another way to Romanize it. That's quite popular, but that's not the way we say it now.
That's the Wade-Giles system, right?
It's a modified. It's actually called the postal system. Because a lot of times people, the dialect they used would say Keelung or something like that. So they use that spelling.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah. So you just kind of have to live with it because everybody's used to it.
That's true. Even today, for as long as I've been in Taiwan, I've noticed that there's been kind of adjustments to the way signage and pronunciation and the way things are spelled. But I'll say Keelung or Keelung is consistently spelled like this. This does not move.
Just like Taipei, almost nobody puts a B in there to make it Taipei.
Right.
And same for Taichung, it's still CH. It actually should be a ZH in Hanyu Pinyin.
I find students have difficulty spelling Kaohsiung the most. I mean, number one is the longest, but the K and the G and then the SH for Pinyin, that's a pretty tough one, I'll say.
And it's tough in both versions. Okay, so let's start with our article, but we're going to keep on talking about spellings and pronunciation for a minute, and you'll find out why soon. Our title is Shores and Tours, Keelung's Endless Lures. Okay, tours, lures, they rhyme. But there's something else going on here.
That's right. In fact, when we read the title today, Karen and I always like to kind of compare the way we say words because words do shift depending where you're from. And I asked Karen, does she say Tours as tour or tour, which is another very common pronunciation. Karen and I both happen to say
tours. There are some little points where Chris's pronunciation differs from mine. There are a few. There are not many. For example, known, Chris says
known.
And that's unusual. I'd never heard that before, but I think it's really cute. I like it. But we just say it slightly differently. But there are not many cases like that. And in this case, in most cases, our pronunciation is the same. And we both say tours. So our title, Shores and Tours, Keelung's Endless Lures. Like Chris said, a lot of people do say tours. So don't be surprised if you hear it. Okay, let's just go ahead with our article. Imagine a city where rain covers the landscape, ancient forts whisper tales of the past, and the smell of fresh seafood fills the air. This is Keelung, a city that is located at the northern tip of Taiwan and defined by its rainy weather, maritime legacy, and mouth-watering snacks.
The Rainy Port. Nicknamed the Rainy Port, Keelung is known for its humid and rainy winters. The city experiences one of the highest annual rainfall levels in Taiwan. The interaction between the northeast monsoon and the city's mountainous terrain brings steady drizzle and misty weather from December through February. In the shift from winter to spring, the city is often blanketed with heavy fog, which sometimes disrupts port operations. However, since the 1990s, climate change has noticeably reduced Keelung's annual rainfall, with occasional droughts in recent years.
The Port of Keelung, gateway to the world. The Port of Keelung has been a gateway for international trade and a key stop for passenger cruises. Founded in 1886, the port gained global recognition in the 1960s when it opened its container terminals and became the world's 7th largest container port. However, challenges in the 1990s, including limited space and insufficient water depth for larger vessels, led to a decline in total cargo volume. To adapt, Keelung developed into a cruise home port and attracted major cruise operators. Beyond its economic significance, the port also serves as a scenic destination, with the nearby Keelung Maritime Plaza being an ideal spot for visitors to enjoy a relaxing stroll. Today, the port stands as a lively center of trade, tourism, and cultural exchange. Now, I hope you remembered some of these details because we're going to be asking you questions about them later on. But if you don't remember, that's okay. You can just kind of flip back. Back to our title, Shores and Tours, Keelung's Endless Lures. So shores is where water meets the sand, meets the land. That's a shore. And tours, that's bringing people along on a visit to see interesting sights in a place. And Keelung is actually Keelung. In Taiwanese, it's Keelung, so you can kind of see where it came from, that spelling. And lures, a lure is something we usually use in fishing. It's something to attract the fish so they will bite on your hook and you can pull them in and then cook and eat the fish. Lure is something that attracts you to something else.
Karen, I'd like to ask you, so when you're working with students that are maybe preparing to speak with foreigners that don't speak Chinese at all, and we have a phrase like Keelung, do you recommend them to say Keelung or to say Keelung? And does it depend on a place-by-place basis, or would you just say universally, just say it as it's spelled or as it's actually pronounced in Chinese? For example, Taipei versus Taipei or Beijing versus Beijing.
You saw me wince there. I can't stand that one. Actually, in general, I think it's better to just say it naturally in Chinese because you say it naturally and correctly because it's your native language. On the other hand, Taipei has now become so common that it's probably easier for a foreigner to understand Taipei than it is for them to understand Taipei. They may not catch it. So I think in the case of Keelung, I would say just say Keelung because that's the name. But for Taipei, because it's the capital, it's just such a big city and we talk about it so often, I would say probably go with Taipei in that case.
Very interesting. I generally tell my students if you're dealing with a foreigner that doesn't speak Chinese and you hear them struggling, you might need to do both. Say the way they say it and then say it accurately for them. We actually say it like this, but if they seem uncomfortable with that phrasing, you could just stick with Keelung. So it's kind of like a depends on the situation.
It depends. There's no one simple answer, but I think that's a good way of handling it. So we're going to say Keelung here because that's the way it's spelled, and that's probably the way most people would read it in the middle of an English article. Okay, our first sentence. Imagine a city where rain covers the landscape, ancient forts whisper tales of the past, and the smell of fresh seafood fills the air. Now, I have to be honest. When I see rain covers the landscape, I don't want to go there because for one thing, I've got curly hair and as soon as it rains, my hair curls. And that means I have to go to the hairdressers again to get my hair fixed. And that's really tiring. Just leave my hair alone, please. I just get really tired of rain. In addition, I usually don't go hiking when it's raining.
I generally take advantage of bad weather. It's like I know crowds will be down in bad weather.
That's a good
idea. But I agree when it's like really rainy all the time.
Yeah.
It's kind of bothersome to carry my big umbrella.
That's right. And it often makes people feel kind of down. It affects mood. You don't
My
get
wife is very affected by very gray, rainy days.
Yeah, you don't get enough sunlight, you will start feeling more down. And I've seen this in many people. So, yeah, when you say it's rain covers the landscape, man, I'll look at a picture of it. I don't want to go in there. But I bet a lot of people have a similar feeling. Okay, ancient forts whisper tales of the past. Now that sounds a little more attractive because I love going to historical buildings.
I agree. I live not far from some of those forts in Danshui, and it's just fun to walk past this. And as a person that particularly loves history and devoted part of my career to it, it's so fun to see some of those things that I only ever read about in the United States being right here and the stones that these people put into place.
Right.
All of that's really wonderful.
It is.
It really is. I pay attention to the word fort because we will come across it several times. In Latin, this F-O-R means to add strength. A fort is one of those big buildings that soldiers use to protect areas. And whispering tales just means to tell stories.
Which everybody loves. And the smell of fresh seafood fills the air. If it's fresh, the smell is okay. If it's not fresh, it's not.
Yeah, that's no good.
But actually, that excites me too because, for example, when I went to Penghu, I was just amazed at the huge seafood market they had right on the shore. I got up early in the morning to see it. It was wonderful.
I've always thought that must be an interesting life. It must be a very hard life.
Yeah.
To be a fishermen or maybe a person that goes out into the ocean and properly trawls up huge nets of fish. It must be interesting, but I don't think I have the heart to see all those fish like
That's
that.
true, too. You can still see them flipping around.
Oh, yeah, I can't stand it.
Okay, this is Keelung, a city that is located at the northern tip of Taiwan and defined by its rainy weather, maritime legacy, and mouth-watering snacks.
Okay, so pay attention to the word maritime. We emphasize that first syllable, and we have that M-A-R. This is suggesting something about the ocean. Now, maritime especially is about a legal situation on the ocean. Later on, we're going to see the word marine, which is emphasized on the second syllable, and that just means like about the ocean. Maritime has laws and soldiers and people and culture associated. It's not just the ocean, it's the way people have legally interacted with the ocean.
Has nothing to do with time, and that really confused me when I was a kid.
Yeah, and also maritime is first syllable. Remember this because it's easy to screw that up.
Maritime, and legacy. Legacy means sort of the collection of everything that's happened before this time. So things that have been passed down to the present generation.
It's related to the word legend.
Legend, right. And mouth-watering snacks, man, you find those wherever you go in Taiwan.
Yeah, one word. Pay attention to mouth-watering. That is an extremely common mistake in my classroom. Mouth-watering is one word.
Yeah, or they might say mouth-watering. The stress is on the first syllable, mouth-watering.
You over the years have really made me pay much more attention about where the stress is because
Good for you.
That's something I would always say but never delve in, but you always make me think twice about it when I teach these words in my own class. Like, are they getting the accent right?
Yeah, that's very good because a lot of people ignore it. We native speakers take it for granted.
Very much so, and you've made me much more conscious of it.
Good for that. Okay, let's continue.
Our second paragraph begins, the rainy port. Nicknamed the rainy port, Keelung is known for its humid and rainy winters. Wow, no thanks.
Exactly. On the other hand, I have to say, I would rather live through a rainy winter than a snowy one, honestly.
Really?
Yeah.
I will often tell people the winter is not so bad. It's always the miserable spring you have to deal with. That was always a tough part for me.
The rain.
I just had 2 students move to, when I say just, I mean the day we're recording, not in actual April here. They just moved to Saskatchewan, and we checked it on their last day just for fun. We checked the local weather, minus 21 degrees Celsius.
Boy, you're going to have a bit of an adjustment.
I told them, I said, dress warm, dress warm.
But I have to say that thinking back on many winters in Minnesota, I had a lot of friends from Taiwan, also from South Asia,
Wow.
Bangladesh, India, Southeast Asia, and especially one from Bangladesh, I think it was. He really surprised me. He loved the winter. He just bundled up and really got into it.
That's to come from such a warm place to move to like cold Minnesota. And Buffalo's not exactly like South Florida. It's a cold place. So when I say Minnesota is cold, you know it's the real deal. This is really cold we're talking about.
I don't think Buffalo's any better personally.
Okay, so a port is a place where we're going to have boats come and stop. It's related to the word harbor, but a harbor, generally speaking, is natural or it's maybe man-made adjusted land. But a port is a place where boats can safely stay overnight for a period of time.
Okay. And humid means that there's a lot of moisture in the air. It's not necessarily raining. Sometimes it's misting a little bit, but you can feel the moisture in the air. It's usually very heavy. If you have ever left Taiwan and then come back, you feel it as soon as your plane lands.
I agree. When they open that door, that first breath of air, you feel the humidity. You really do.
You can smell it. You can feel it. It's heavy. You walk in the airport and, boy, we're back in Taiwan.
So true. So true. Our next sentence. The city experiences one of the highest annual rainfall levels in Taiwan. So annual just means yearly. ANN is just the Latin word for year. Let's go to our next sentence. The interaction between the northeast monsoon and the city's mountainous terrain brings steady drizzle and misty weather from December through February.
Boy, we have a lot of weather terms here. So interaction is a good word, just in general. To interact with other people, we had some good interactions. Northeast monsoon, translated directly into Chinese. It means season wind, and that's what it is in Chinese. Mountainous is just an adjective for mountain. That means there's lots of mountains. Terrain just means the land, what the land is like. Oh, it's covered with lots of mountains. Steady means it keeps going, it hardly stops. Drizzle is very light rain. And misty is even finer rain. And we've been getting so much misty weather in Taipei. These are good words to know to describe the weather here, even in the north, in Taipei. And then from December through February, that's quite a long time.
Just pay attention to mountainous. Remember that OUS is usually emphasizing an adjective. There are lots of words like humorous, nervous. OUS is suggesting an adjective. Let's continue. In the shift from winter to spring, the city is often blanketed with heavy fog, which sometimes disrupts port operations.
It disrupts things, so that means it's kind of an inconvenience. And I have said that I'm not a fan of rain, but on the other hand, I live on a mountain just outside Taipei City, and I actually love the fog. It's so beautiful because it moves around. It gives you like a really entrancing landscape. Looks like a painting.
Yeah, that blanket is a very beautiful word here. So it's painted over. It looks like just a nice, heavy white blanket lifted and laid right over your city.
Right, and it changes the scene from second to second.
However, since the 1990s, climate change has noticeably reduced Keelung's annual rainfall with occasional droughts in recent years. I have noticed I listen to a lot of radio in the U.S., especially sports radio from my home city, and they often will comment about the weather, and they're almost always pleased that it's currently, 10 degrees Celsius in December, or it's, 9 degrees Celsius instead of -5, -10 degrees Celsius. And, that's worrying, but the people there are definitely not complaining in the moment.
Yeah, if you come from a cold climate, you know what we're talking about.
Drought just means not enough rain.
And watch that GH, because a lot of words that have GH in them have unpredictable pronunciation, so you have to pay attention.
I wrote the word out right above it just to remind myself so I don't accidentally say it wrong.
Right. If you take off the DR and the S, it's ought. So watch out. The vowel will change. This is droughts. All right, our last paragraph, the port of Keelung, gateway to the world. Now that's kind of fun because you think of Taiwan as a kind of small place that is not hugely well known in the world, but you think it's the gateway to the world or a gateway to the world. I want to know more. The port of Keelung has been a gateway for international trade and a key stop for passenger cruises. So a lot of trade goes on here because it's a very important port. And also, people go on these cruises, on these huge, huge cruise ships. They are so big. I've never been on one. I've seen pictures.
I did not know that the passenger cruise boats stopped here. I didn't
go to Keelung
too often. And I was like, I just kind of want to go see one because I know how big they are.
That's right. And that people would think, oh, here I am in Taiwan, in this kind of not very well-known city. That's kind of exciting to think about. Founded in 1886, the port gained global recognition in the 1960s when it opened its container terminals and became the world's 7th largest container port.
So 1886 is the same year that Coca-Cola was founded, which I think is like a weird, just kind of a coincidence.
But they have to ship, too, I guess. Okay, so it is a very important container terminal, and the reason that we can get so many goods that are made in other countries is because of this container shipping. However, challenges in the 1990s, including limited space and insufficient water depth for larger vessels, led to a decline in total cargo volume. So these ships are getting larger and larger and larger. That means you have to have a very deep port, and Keelung isn't quite deep enough for some of the bigger ones.
We often think about Titanic as this massively large ship, but there have been graphical representations where you compare a modern cruise ship or a modern container shipping boat versus the Titanic, and those modern boats are 4 to 5 times bigger. They are colossal ships that just are filled with things. It's unbelievable how big those ships are, and you need very deep water to hold something that large.
One other thing to note about these very large ships is they create a lot of pollution that goes straight into the ocean. To adapt, Keelung developed into a cruise home port and attracted major cruise operators. That's something new for both of us. So we've got these cruise ships coming. So if you want to meet a lot of foreigners, that might be a good place to go, hang around. Become a tour guide, you can practice your English. Beyond its economic significance, the port also serves as a scenic destination, with the nearby Keelung Maritime Plaza being an ideal spot for visitors to enjoy a relaxing stroll. So I like it when they do that. They take a port, a shore, and then they make it into a place that's good for tourism, that gives you a place to go that's pretty different from what you're used to.
And there's that phrase, maritime again, remember, this means like a cultural relationship to the ocean, not just the ocean itself.
Today, the port stands as a lively center of trade, tourism, and cultural exchange.
So I would love to see one of these cruise ships, not because I'm especially excited to go on a cruise, but they're so large, and I've only ever heard of them. And here's this place that's not far from us where we can actually go see one of them. Although it would be super weird to just go to Keelung to see a cruise ship.
I think it would be kind of exciting with all that stuff they have inside. I'm always amazed at all the levels they have, all the stories. Several swimming pools, they have casinos, they have restaurants, they have dances. I mean, man, it's like a whole city that can sail on the ocean.
It sounds like an interesting engineering marvel.
That's it for today. Tune in next time. We'll hear part 2 of our article, Shores and Tours, Keelung's Endless Lures. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.